you love entertainment, current events, and Hollywood, don't miss Creator to Creators, hosted by the filmmaker Meosha Bean, known for the Shudder hit documentary Horror Noir and the acclaimed film Anatomy of an Anti-Hero, Redemption. This show features interviews with filmmakers and creatives from around the globe. Join the fun with guest celebrities and gain valuable insights. Subscribe now and follow Creator to Creators. If you love entertainment, current events, and Hollywood, don't miss Creator to Creators, hosted by the filmmaker Meosha Bean, known for the Shudder hit documentary Horror Noir and the acclaimed film Anatomy of an Anti-Hero, Redemption. This show features interviews with filmmakers and creatives from around the globe. Join the fun with guest celebrities and gain valuable insights. Subscribe now and follow Creator to Creators.
Hi, guys. Welcome to another episode of Creators to Creators today. Today, we have a special guest,
Lisa Soper.
Tell me, I love going back to the beginning. I think that the beginning kind of charts our trajectory in life. I think like the little habits that we pick up along the way follow us into our adulthood and make it's like a part of who we are. Tell me a little bit about your childhood. What was that like? And were you always in the creative world field and like just doing all the things when you're a child? Like when did that happen?
Yes, very much so. As a child, it was, I'm going to sound like a psychopath, but I guess all of us kind of are, like films, either that or masochistic or both. I was always creating different worlds, environments, and stories to play with throughout childhood because it was always about pushing boundaries so much. And I was really supported to push those boundaries from my mom, who would start telling me a story and then encourage me to finish it with whatever way that was in my own way of interpreting. And some of that was done through, writing stories or creating artwork or going in the backyard and playing, or lying at school, whatever those things were, or traumatizing my cousins when they'd come over because I would tell them stories of what would happen if this or what would happen if that.
Yeah.
And I think what was exhilarating for me as a child was being able to kind of make these environments and these worlds and sharing those stories with other people. That was what was important to me because I would get to see their reactions, their responses. And if it was positive or if it was engaging and they wanted to hear more, then I knew that I was doing something right. And even though at that point, I didn't really know that this is what it would lead to, it was just something that felt right for me. And as I was growing up, I went to a local college and university when I came back to Canada because I was raised in Florida.
Oh my God, me too. What part?
South St. Pete's.
Wow. All right, Floridian.
Yes. And I'm so grateful for that experience. And I think that fellow Floridians will totally understand what I'm talking about. It's a very different place to live and grow up.
Yeah.
And it just really just helped to really stimulate that creativity, I think. When I came back to Canada, it was time to find a career and figure out what I'm going to do with my life. Yeah. And, it was one of these things where I remember walking through the halls of this local college university and thinking, I don't like this. I'm not smart enough for this. I can't connect with that. None of this is really hitting me. So I passed by the Police Foundation's building and I was like, hey, maybe I could be Clarice Starling. She's cool. And then realizing, so many years of police foundations and yada, yada, I was like, oh God, this is so deflating. And I was walking around with my little sketchbook and there happened to be a guy that was talking in this place they called the Observatory, which is like a general meeting place for a lot of the students and people that are coming to be students in the college. And I sat down and he was a special effects coordinator for 13th Warrior. They had just finished filming.
Oh.
And he was talking about his whole experience there. And at the end of the conversation, he asked to see my sketchbook and I said, here you go. And he's like, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I want to do what you do. Um, this is great. This is literally, being able to create a world, live a life that doesn't exist, and
Yeah.
then rinse and repeat and never get bored.
Yeah.
One day you're in a fairy tale, one day you're in a comedy, one day you're crying with someone who's going through some trauma and trying to help them through it.
Hmm.
Whatever those stories are that can be told, I wanted to help tell them in some
Right.
way. And he encouraged me to go and take animation. And
Mm.
I was like, but that's cartoons. And he says, yes. But when you're doing that, and at that time, everything was paper and pencil. So you're disciplining yourself to draw 24 drawings or sometimes 12 to represent the illusion of life,
Mm.
um, and per second. And that's a lot of drawings, a
Yeah.
heck of a lot of drawings. But if you can get an emotional reaction from that when you are the camera, you're the actor, you're the environment, you're all these different departments, just as yourself alone in an office. And if you can get that understanding, one, you'll be able to understand the motivations behind storytelling.
Yeah.
And then two, you'll be able to understand and appreciate all the other departments that are an integral part of putting this all together.
Hmm.
So, after that big speech, of course, I'm gonna, drink the Kool-Aid and jump in. Um, and funny enough, the side effect was I fell in love with animation,
Love
and I
that.
got to work with this amazing animator, who a lot of animators would understand who this is, was Ryan Larkin, and he was a big Emmy Award winner, from the '60s, and came up with a lot of different techniques of animating, and a really, really special person. Um, so I would go and pick him up from a homeless shelter, uh, because he lived on the street at this point
Oh.
in his life, by choice,
Oh. Oh.
ish. Big, that's a separate call.
Yeah.
Um, but I was so fortunate to be able to sit with this guy and just create art
Yeah.
day after day, and be asked those questions. What is the character thinking and feeling?
Hmm.
And those are the motivations. Like, something can look great, but if there's no emotion behind it,
Yeah.
it's not going to go anywhere. And then he was friends with this guy, Stanley Lewis, who was with the group of seven, who would come downstairs, because he had a little apartment upstairs from this bar that we would hang out in, and come and talk to me about sculpting and
Nice.
how that all worked. And, so I was just surrounded by really creative individuals, um, kind of going through this whole process of finding where I was going to land. And, I was fortunate enough to work with a couple of animation studios that was great, and worked on a couple of kids' TV shows. And then one day, a friend of mine stopped by, and I had a really good job animating,
Mm.
after college, and was on a good track, to have something steady and secure and not
Yeah,
worry about anything. And
absolutely.
my buddy shows up and he says, "There's this movie, and it's like a Herschel Gordon Lewis, gore
Yeah,
movie
right.
being shot in Ottawa, and they have like $250,000 for this movie. And it's going to be Herschel Gordon Lewis. It's going to be David Hess. It's going to be Michael Berryman and Sasha Grey." And
Nice.
I'm like, wow, this is great. And he's like, "You should quit your job and come and work with us, and we'll give you $1,000." And I was like, wow, this is great. And I was like, what am I going to do? And he's like, art department. I'm like, sweet. Okay, I'll figure that out.
Right.
So I quit my really great job.
Wow.
And so I quit my job. I went to do this thing. It was crazy, and we broke all the rules. It was a complete guerrilla hot mess of a
Yes.
movie, but it was so much fun. And as soon as it finished, I was broke, I was unemployed, and I
Mm.
was exhilarated, because that first time when I got into animation and I actually fell in love with it,
Hmm.
I did my line test for the first time, which is when you scan all your images to see what the movement is on its own.
Right.
And when I saw that, this electricity kind of took over my whole body. And I was like, oh my God, I'm a god. I can create life. I can take it away. I
Yeah.
can turn this bouncing ball into an eyeball of an ogre. I can give it wings and make it fly through the stratosphere like a planet, and then land in some other solar system, and check out different worlds. Anything was possible as long as you could imagine it. And now, opening up this next chapter was being able to share this with other human beings. So it wasn't just me by myself in my own brain,
Hmm.
and whatever I could create on the page. It was me with like-minded individuals that also had all of these creative thoughts and passions, and we could use it in a tangible way.
Right.
Uh, and that's why I fell in love with it.
I
And
love
from,
that.
yeah, it was kind of great. And from that point, I pushed through and I continued with art department, and was fortunate enough to, start building a pretty, a fun career, great career, in production design, and got to work with some really great people. And then at one point, I was, um, I was working on a series, Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, and my
Nice. Great show. Great job. I mean, fantastic
thank
work.
you. All of us, it's our unicorn show. I have a unicorn film and then I've got a unicorn show. And that was definitely our unicorn show. Everyone was fantastic. And, you know, it was heartbreaking when it came to an end for sure.
Yeah, I was very sad.
Yes. But being able to have that experience, all of
Yeah.
us together,
Hmm.
was really, really something else. And when I was on the show, we have a producing director named Rob Seidenglans, and he came up to me at the beginning of part four, and he said, "So you should be directing this season." And I said, "Well, thank you, but I appreciate that, and I'm so happy you finally recognized my talent." But let's be frank with each other. Your slate is full. And I looked at the wall, and we had this big calendar that showed every director that was coming in for the season. Um, and he walked over to the calendar and he pulled one of the names off the board, which is his own, and he
Mm.
handed it to me. And he said, "No, do this
Oh,
episode."
wow. Wow.
And, again, for anyone who's directed, especially for episodic television, that's not a small gift.
No.
It really isn't. And I asked him, why would he sacrifice this, that belongs to him? It's one thing to say to someone like, "Oh, I'd love to get you on this." It's another
Hmm.
thing to sacrifice one of your own positions, for the sake of another. And he said, "This is what we do." And
Mm.
and I said, "Okay, explain more." And he said, "We find the talent that's going to continue, the torch, and they're going to continue taking us to new worlds, and they're going to push boundaries and open up, the creativity in different ways, and just expand on what we're doing with storytelling."
Hmm.
And he
Hmm.
said, "That's what I see in you, and that's what motivates me to make this decision."
Wow.
Um, and I'm forever grateful for that, for him seeing that in me and, making that sacrifice. Do I know that my career path would have ended at the same place? Yeah. But,
Mm.
it wouldn't have been able to be on Sabrina,
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
such an incredible crew and cast and, stories that were being told. Um, and, there was that luxury of knowing everyone and knowing how
Yeah.
the machine worked and knowing what the network was looking for and what we were telling. So I was much more relaxed coming into my first kick at the can.
Nice.
Um, yeah, and then from that, it just kind of kept going.
I love
And
that. Like it's just like
yeah,
a continuation of wins
yes, yes,
because you
yeah,
decided to say yes.
yes, this is true.
Wow. It's so interesting. I always wonder when, obviously the journey isn't ever easy, but the story of just how like someone can get to that level of obviously that's the goal, but it's like we don't quite know how we're going to get there. But I think it's just saying yes and letting life do its take its course and let it, take you on the journey. Because I think if you say no, fear,
Yes,
obviously you're standing in front of your own opportunity.
use it. Like you use the fear. I wake up in
Yeah.
most days when if I don't have fear going
Yeah.
into an episode or going into a film or going into a new set, whether I'm directing or designing or animating, I have to check myself
Mm.
because it's what am I missing? What could I be missing in this moment? Because the day that I walk into a set and, oh, it's just easy, I'm not the
Mm.
right person for that job. I
Mm.
think that it's that fear that, and not fear in a bad way, but the fear of the awe that could come,
Hmm.
and being able to face that fear and take it on with confidence, or learn to build that confidence to be able to do it. And then when you get to the other side, it's so much more fulfilling.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. I love
Yeah.
that and you're a woman and it's like yes, you can do it. Absolutely. And there are jobs available. Absolutely. I feel like a lot of times like
Yeah.
you hear people saying, "Well, there's no jobs." And I just think that you just have to well, obviously not wait for the opportunity, but I think, as you're saying, yes, this one job opens up, there's always going to be other things, and you just never know how it works out. But um,
Yes.
I have a fun question. So, what challenges you, challenges did you face directing um the drama? I think it was called Remind Me. And
Mhm.
how did you balance the realism with emotional depth in that? Because the topic and how heavy that project is.
So with Remind Me, we're still in the development stage right now,
Ah,
and we will be filming it this early in 2025. But what we
okay.
have done so far is we've done a proof of concept. Uh,
Nice.
yes, which is when you have the opportunity to be able to do this, it's so much better than a sizzle reel or a
Mhm.
lookbook because you have a moment to take that really good peek in and show what you want. It's not
Right.
let's pull scenes from something else and it'll be like this, but it'll be our own.
Right.
Or shots from another film and it's like it looks like this, but it's not quite like this.
Hmm.
What we did was go out with pretty nice Sony camera and
Nice.
half a dozen people and our wonderful lead, Eric Johnson, and put together basically, I think it ended up about 10 minutes. The first cut was 24 minutes. It was fantastic. Uh,
Nice.
and but it was way too long. But it was good for an experiment for us, just to be able to see kind of what tonally the feature side would end up looking like. Uh,
Mm.
but it was a really good taste to see what works, what doesn't work,
Hmm.
where we want to lean into more, where we think we can get away with more. Um, and yes, you're not wrong. The content is much heavier than what I've traditionally done. And I think that's what drew me to the project
Mm.
because that's very much the world that I've been looking forward to playing in.
Mm.
Um, because it's one that I haven't had a chance to do yet, but I feel very passionately about.
Mhm.
Um, and being able to try to get as close to representing a fractured mind as
Yeah.
you can and giving the audience not the observational approach to it, but
Hmm.
the actual experience of going through it with them.
Mm.
That was what excited me the most.
Yeah, absolutely. Because when I read that, I was like, oh man, that's gonna be heavy. Like,
Yes.
my grandmother had that, and to watch to just to be around that and see it up close.
Yes.
Oh, it's pretty scary, and going from you remember someone and then you completely just you don't
Yeah.
know anymore. That's a really interesting story to tackle, and visually speaking too, and also bringing your production design into that, which is I'm very curious of what that's going to look like too.
It's it's not going to be contemporary. That's what we know for sure
Yeah.
because you can't take a linear approach with
Hmm.
something like this kind of emotional condition that's happening, this mental condition that's happening throughout the story, and to be able to try to give the audience as much of a journey as possible of what this person's going through, while their home is being invaded,
Hmm.
because it's got to be an action. Uh, it it takes a lot of creative liberties, I'm going to say,
Hmm.
um, where we see things and we're not too sure what's going on
Mm.
necessarily.
Okay.
Um, but they all have points and reasons, and it does all come together at the end.
Wow, that's incredible. Well, congratulations on
Thank
that.
you.
It's exciting. Um, I have a question I love asking every guest, and there's no wrong answer, but the three levels of influence: money, power, and respect. And if you can choose only one of those things, which one would you choose and why?
Money, power, and respect. Oh
Yeah.
God. Is it respect for others or respect for like having
Uh,
people respecting me?
yeah, either way. Yeah.
Oh God.
It's your world. It's whatever you want it to be.
So I would never pick respect to want people to respect me because I really feel that that has to be an individual choice. I would never want someone. I would never want that of someone if they didn't want it. Does that make
Right.
sense?
Yeah,
Sorry,
yeah.
I'm way looking too deep into this.
I love
Um,
it.
I I always want to be able to have that awareness of respecting others.
Mhm.
Um, money, uh, I just need what I need to be able to
Yeah.
keep being creative.
Yeah.
And that's really all I need.
Yeah. I
Um,
literally would say the same thing.
yeah, yeah. Like, look, if somebody wants to give me a shit ton of money and I can go help, help a third world country or help, a family in need, then deal, let's go. But that's that. And power, ooh, that's tough.
Yeah.
I think if I was like He-Man, and I had the power of Grayskull, I could do a lot of really great things with it. But power in a grounded fashion, I, you know, again, it's not something that I think that I would ask for um,
Mm,
beyond what I naturally would kind of go to. I'm so sorry. I gave you like the
I love
crappiest
it.
answer ever.
Oh, no, these are great. I love your perspective. Usually people say, the noble answer, which is respect, I
Oh,
respect. I'm like, okay, really? Would you actually choose that if you could? Really? I don't know. But I like your thought process with that. That's very interesting.
thank you.
If you could go on a coffee
Mhm.
date with any director, living or dead, who would it be? And
Oh,
what
wow.
would you want to pick their brain about?
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. That's tough.
Yeah, it
Um,
is. It's a hard one.
any director, living or dead, that's
Yeah.
not a fair
I
question.
know, I know. It's
um, oh man. Um, that's that. Okay, so I
I
would
can
say,
narrow it down for you.
yeah, sure.
Or
Help me a
you,
little bit.
um, or living director. How about that? Well, I feel a lot of directors.
All right. So any director living that I could sit down, have a coffee with, and pick their brain.
Yeah, what would you ask them?
Um, you know what? I'm gonna actually say James Gunn,
Oh,
and I'm gonna say James Gunn because I know him and I've
nice.
worked with him, but we've never had a chance to sit down and have a coffee
Oh, wow.
and just go through the just the awesome fucking way he directs and creates stories and makes films and empowers his crew and his
Yeah.
cast to be such a huge collaborative part of the process.
Hmm.
And I think that yeah, that's who I'd want to sit down and have a coffee with for sure.
That's beautiful. I love that. That's okay, James. If you hear this now, um, what's the most memorable piece of advice you've ever received, as a director or whatever, simply that shaped your approach into filmmaking?
Well, I'm going to tell you the first three pieces of advice that I was ever given when I was on set.
Nice.
Was it the best advice? Oh, probably not. I'll tell you that because I've received some incredible advice throughout the years. But I do always remember, and I quite often quote the first three pieces of advice because of where I was when I first came into the industry
Hmm.
and the emotional wreck that I was when I
Hmm.
first came into the industry. So that movie that I was telling you about,
Yeah.
that was amazing. Of course, there were bad days. And there was one particularly bad day where I felt like a failure. My cell phone went off on set and it was during a take, and I felt like a failure. The props didn't work properly for the set. I felt like a failure.
Mm.
I just kept hitting, thing after thing after thing that was just going wrong. And I thought, I have made the worst decisions ever. And my prop master at the time, who was on the show, who was pretty veteran, and he came and he found me, pretty heavily crying in the back of set. Not my
Yeah.
finest moment.
Yeah.
Um, and he said, cheer up, kid. One of these days, you're going to be my boss. And, I wiped my
Mm.
tears from my eyes and I was like, you really think so? Um, and he's like, yeah, because you give a shit. And he said, let me give
Oh,
you three pieces of advice. And I said, okay, what is it? And he said, all right. And this is a prop master, veteran prop master.
love it.
You need to understand, kid, the power of the memo. So write everything down. And I was like, okay. And he's like, they're gonna get you. He's like, people will talk about shit, and you're gonna forget it. But if you write the shit down, then you've got that paper trail to protect
Yeah.
you and to protect others. And
Right.
I was like, okay, fair enough. And I said, what's the second one? And he said, second one is don't ever use your own fucking money.
I
I
love
was
it.
like, oh, okay, fair enough. And he's like, you really think these guys are going to care if their production goes down and you've got a petty cash outstanding? Don't ever use your own money. You know, you hold them accountable. And I was like, all right. And he said, it'll also teach you to understand budgeting, what things cost, how much this is actually going to affect things. These
Mm-hmm.
all sound like mundane things, but they all really actually help.
Yeah.
And then the third thing, which I think is the most important of the three, but I always like to tell the three,
Mhm.
is every day you're on set, treat every single person as though they are your boss and give them
Mm.
the respect that you would for any boss. Because one day they might be, is what he said.
Yeah. Yeah.
And two, it doesn't matter if they're above you, below you, beside you. We're all there to accomplish the same thing, and we all deserve the same amount of respect.
I love that. That's wonderful advice. I love
Yeah,
I that's thank you. Thank you for sharing
of
that.
course.
So
Well,
important.
thank you to Tim
Oh,
Walton.
absolutely. Where, when you have days, like you said, obviously the lows in this journey, the uncertainties, sometimes you just don't want to do it. Um, what what's the thing that what do you do to keep you going? Do you have like a ritual, like a meditation? What do you do to like kind of stay balanced?
Oh, so many things. It can depend. There are some marginally irritating days. There's days where you get tired and you don't even know what you're mad about, but
Yeah.
you're getting mad because you're trying to make the coffee and it's just not coming out, or you can't get in the fucking parking spot. I'm sorry, I swear like a sailor.
It's okay.
Um, I hope this is not. This isn't one of those
This is
like
PG
things.
13. No, I was kidding. No.
A lot of beeps in my interview. Um,
You're
uh,
good. You're good.
but it's really just
Yeah.
taking that moment and breathing and really looking at the fact that we are not saving lives. We
Very
are
true.
adults being paid money to play in a sandbox as though we're 3-year-olds
Yeah.
with lots of very expensive toys. So, something could happen, and and we've all had this, and I will start to have a panic attack, if I forgot this, or if this has happened, or
Mhm.
whatever it could be. Like I've had everything from the sets on fire.
Oh, wow.
Oh shit.
Oh my God.
Yeah, accidents happen. Um, Thankfully no one was hurt, but the house
Thank
died.
God.
Oh yeah, along with a lot of gear. Um, but if you're calm,
Mm,
first and foremost in those moments, if you can bring yourself and center yourself, then you can have that observational look. Then you can bring yourself to solutions.
mm,
And I think the knowledge of the excitement of problem solving, of
mhm.
being able to have that moment to problem solve, is what gets me to the other side, to be
Yeah.
completely honest with you. The breathing doesn't do a whole lot other than be able to give me the ability to go, okay, how can I save the day? Because I think that's the fun part, and that's the challenge. We become so spoiled with, automatic this and
Mhm.
and plug it in and post with that. But
Yeah.
when you're faced with something and it's like it has to be done practically in this moment and you
Mhm.
only have $5,
Yeah.
but you still want to get the same kind of emotion across, we find those creative ways. Like that's why we look to so many, films that were done, in the late 70s, early 80s,
Yeah.
when we didn't
Yeah.
have a lot of money, but we had a lot of people that were really passionate about telling stories, and they couldn't get something greenlit. They just had to
Mhm.
do it
Yeah.
and
I
really
love
prove
that.
themselves. And yeah, I think it's that kind of drive where it doesn't really matter about the money. It matters about how you approach that. I hope this answers your question.
Absolutely. And that was literally my question. My next question was going to be like AI, but like it totally makes sense. Like I
Yeah.
feel like AI is it's great. I'm not saying that it's a negative thing, but I feel like it does take away from
Yeah.
the emotion that
Oh,
humans give when we are on, you know what I mean? Like that's why
100%.
we like the classics, and that's why we can
Yeah.
go to those like old films like Jurassic Park, and we still feel it makes us feel.
I feel the same way about AI as I do about visual effects, which is it has a purpose to enhance.
Yeah.
in certain ways, and to support in certain ways, but it should not be a crutch and it should not be a replacement.
Hmm.
Something as simple as scriptation, for example. No offense to scriptation, I still have it. I pay my subscription every year. I love you guys. But I also will have my paper script, and I also write all of my notes on my paper script, and then we'll rewrite them when all the pages come out, which we've all seen double goldenrod. uh, but what that does is, when I found that I switched only to digital
Hmm.
for a very brief moment, I was retaining much less because I
Mm,
wasn't physically going through the act
I
and
see.
writing all of these notes myself
Yeah.
to remind myself. I wasn't as creative, I found.
Hmm.
So what I do is I use both. And then when I get on set, because I've gone through this massive ritual, sorry, I have a script next to me. That's why I'm like looking next to me.
I love it.
My script will look like a big pile of poo by the end of prep, right before we go in. But then what I can do is I can take that. I've done all of this, then I throw it into scriptation, and from there we're in an update situation, and it's a very kind
Right.
of
I
way.
love that.
Yeah, and that's using it as a tool. The same way with visual effects, where it's like I can't get them to float in the air, but I'm
Hmm.
not going to VFX them as a fake person, in a fake environment. I'm going to put them on a wire. I'm going to put them on a stand and rub out the stand after, or whatever I can do. And if it can't do what we want it to do, let's try to find a creative way to give that feeling of what's
Hmm.
happening. Like if you don't have $25,000 to do a big car crashing through ice
Yeah.
into the water scene. What can you do if you have $15?
Yeah.
You can make a fake piece of ice and put it towards a piece of plexiglass and have that hit the face, or have
Hmm.
your cast face underwater, and be with them in those moments. And that's where you get those surprises. And I
Yeah.
feel like AI is never going to be able to do that
Yeah.
for
Definitely.
us.
Definitely. Yeah, absolutely not. What advice would you give to up and coming, you know, and people that want to get an entertainment business, people that want to be a director, or even just get into production designing?
Um, First and foremost, be humble and be open-minded. Listen to the critiques because there's going to be a lot of it. And it's all good. Even when it's bad, even when we don't agree, it's all good and all helpful. And keep pushing. When I got my first theatrical release production design job, I had only ever done, movies of the week and little indie horror films, and I didn't have big shiny crazy credits. But I showed up at that office every day and I said, listen, thank you for interviewing me. And they were really great to take me in and interview me at first. And, they very politely declined and said I didn't have the resume yet,
Mhm.
um, to be able to do that job. And I said, okay, well, I'm going to keep coming by
Yeah.
and, and not to get the job. Um, but I want to see who you hire because I want to try to see if I can get a job under them
Hmm.
and learn the ropes and do whatever I need to do, and get there. And I just kept showing up, kept showing up, kept showing up, and eventually, I actually ended up getting a call from the director after he had gone through a lot of interviews with other designers, and he said, "Listen, I just want you to design this." And I said, "What?" And he said, "Yeah, you're up for it." And I was like, "Well, hell yeah." Um, and I went into our producer's office, and the one who had thanked me for coming in, but told me I wasn't experienced enough. And I said, "I'm not going to let you down. I swear. I promise. I'm going to figure it. I'm going to do this. I know what I'm doing. I do, and I have no idea. But I wanted to reassure him it was
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
And he just kind of like eyeballed me over this laptop for a moment after I stopped making a fool of myself. Um, and he said, "Well, sink or swim, kid. It's either going to be the first of many, or this will be the end of your career." I
You're like, perfect.
was
Thanks.
like, awesome. And I love challenges, and I would give that
Yeah.
advice to, again, to kind of extend off of this advice. Challenge yourself,
Yeah.
and that's what I did here. Was I wasn't like single white female showing up and being like, "Give me a job." Please, you want to give me, look, I cut my hair like you.
You're
Um,
hilarious.
Thank you. It was showing up and saying, you're telling me I can't do this. I'm going to show you one way or another that I can.
Right.
And that's what it is. And if you're telling me that I don't know what I need to know at this moment in time, I'm going to go and figure it out, and I'm going to go and
Right.
get that experience, and I'm going to keep showing you.
Yeah.
Because we all started somewhere without all these crazy credits. And
Right.
yes, that's going to be the first go-to is, oh, well, what have they done? Can they handle this? Can they do
Yeah.
this? Oh, well, I don't see any experience for like, big sci-fi shows. I remember doing one interview, and they had said, well, she hasn't done England, contemporary this before. And I said, yeah, well, or she wasn't from England, I think is what it was, or something like that. And I said, yeah, and I also didn't exist in like 1816,
Right.
but I just did a movie about that.
Right.
And we got that all historically accurate. It was like, oh, fair point. I said, because this
Right.
is our job, do that research and push those boundaries. And,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that was like way long. Um,
I love it.
you can cut it down, I swear.
No, I love it. I love it.
But yeah, that's it. Like I try to hire as many people as I can that want my job
Yeah.
with whatever I'm doing, because then I know that they're going to be hungry for doing the best job they can. And if you can get a job sweeping floors on a show, do it. It might suck,
Mhm.
but it's you will watch and you will learn and you will pick up all these different tricks and everything like that, and you'll make yourself more invaluable the more
That,
experience you can get.
that's beautiful. Wow. I really enjoyed this interview. Thank you so much for your
Well,
time.
thank you.
This was so fun. Um, where can people find you really quick on social media to follow everything you got going on?
On social media, it's just my name. It's my legal name. It is, and I'll spell it out for you because it's crazy. Uh, it's you can probably also find me at Lisa Soper. On Instagram. I'm only on Instagram. Uh,
Oh, okay. We'll follow
yes,
you.
I know. And if you're confused of which one I am, it's Lieselotteeser. That's me.
Nice. Nice. Love it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. This was amazing. I had a great time. Thank you again for
Thank
your
you,
time
Sam.
and your wisdom. And thank you all for listening. And always remember to live, love, laugh. We'll see you guys next time.